Andrew, I didn't see any pictures of your babies in Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
Were they dressed up?
Yes, my daughter was Elsa and my son was Spider-Man.
Aw.
It was pretty funny.
Yay.
Let's see if you can see it.
Oh, super cute.
Yeah, they're funny.
I was looking at pictures. So Charlie's 12 now, and I was looking at pictures of him dressed up for Halloween, his first Halloween and his second Halloween. And it's crazy because I can still remember what it felt like to like squeeze his chubby little cheeks and his chubby little tummy. Like it's just like so visceral. Like
Yeah.
Those years are.
It's funny because I did the exact same thing. I went through my camera roll and looked at my son's first Halloween and then pictures of him now. And it's just crazy how fast they grow.
Yep. Happens fast.
It sure does.
About that, let me turn this off. Take the ring off. We ready to start? Mr. Cardona, do we have 12 yet?
Yes, I have 12 o'clock.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And I don't have any public comment for our public forum. So we'll begin with our agenda prep. We have, let me see, 5 board members present with 2 absent. And maybe Mr. McLaughlin will join us later. I have not heard from him. So I assume he'll come in a little bit. We can go ahead and get started with our agenda.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Hold on a second. I have a big thing blocking myself. So item 1, call meeting to order. Item A, roll call and declaration of quorum. Item 2 for the board meeting will be our normal pledge of allegiance. Item 3 will be the canvassing of the November 3rd, 2020 school board election results. Item 4 will be the issuing of certificates of election to each candidate elected in the November 3rd, 2020 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 5 will be the file statement of officer by each individual elected on November 3rd, 2020 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 6 will administer the oath of office to each individual elected on November 3rd, 2020 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 7, election of board officers pursuant to section 11.061 of the Texas Government Code. Mr. Cruz sent me the government code. So after this, I'll forward that information to the board this morning. I think Trustee Cantu, if you want to talk about this, I think you had a conversation with him. I think that, so I don't know what that conversation was.
I did speak with Mr. Cruz this morning, and he said since we had already elected our officers, that we could go ahead and have a motion and a second and then a vote saying that these are to stay in place. The currently elected officers were to stay in place. And that's what my understanding was, that based on our board policy, we were fine. But based on state statute, it happens whenever you elect new people to the board. And I know that we swore in Margie at that time. So we did have a new person that was sworn in and had our officer elections in June, which is based on our board procedures. But he said that we could just go ahead and have a motion stating that we accept the current board officers as is and vote on that and move on from that.
Item 8, we'll have public forum. Item 9, the superintendent's report. Mr. Wozniak is going to give a report in place of my superintendent's report. We had a conference call with Texas TEA on Friday with this testing program they were piloting in 8 districts across the state. And so I think they're looking at rolling that out. So I was on another call. He and Dr. Rees-Mills sat in on the call with TEA, and he has the information of what that will look like for us as we start to begin to opt in to doing that. I think for us, it's a good thing. We kind of do a little bit with the athletics, but I think this will give us the ability to expand a little more. But he has more specific details about what it actually looks like, including samples of MOUs from other districts and recommendations. But I'll give up my time so that he can talk about that, because I know that's really important at this time of year. Item 10, reports and information. We'll have our yearly presentation by our auditors regarding the 2020 comprehensive financial report. Now, I'll just say this as superintendent, we disagree with them on a couple of things. So they're going to say some things, but we disagree with them because, as you know, House Bill 3 came out last year. And so we were trying to figure out this whole finance and this whole new system. And so now they're coming back, some of the auditors, and saying we should have done some things, which they didn't even have rules and regulations in place till the year started. So it's kind of just, and Mr. Barton can talk about that, but they're going to do their comprehensive financial report, which will be, I hate to say this, longer than 15 minutes. We try to keep them to 15 minutes, but I don't think this one will be short. Item 10B, our academic update. We do have our district and campus improvement plans that Dr. Rees-Mills and Ms. Dre will walk through, and some changes we made to those processes to include some addendums on SEL supports that are in the campus improvement plans. And then we'll follow that up with Ms. Dre talking about innovative program initiatives. We've talked a little bit about this, that we have a state grant for additional days school year funding for a couple of schools. And we have some other school action fund grants for Goodnight and Miller, but we thought it'd be good for you guys to actually hear, you know, a little bit more about the process of these grants and how it involves the community in helping kind of develop what that campus curriculum program is going to look like. So she'll present that. Item 10C, Mr. Sandoval will give his construction update as he does monthly. Item 11, the approval of consent agenda items. The approval of the minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on October 19, 2020, and special call board meeting on November 2nd, 2020. Item 12, items for action. Item A will probably move. We'll probably move that to the bottom, the budget amendments. Mr. Barton, I don't know what other budget amendments we have, if you want to chime in right now.
Sir, right now it's just the budget amendment to support the retention incentive that was approved last month.
Item 12B, consider approval of 2020 comprehensive financial report as a result of the auditor's report. Item 12C, consider approval of district and campus improvement plans. So we will have those to y'all, the one pager, and then we'll put those in hopefully by Friday, so that this Friday, so that you can have ample time to look at those campus improvement plans. Is that correct, Dr. Rees-Mills? I think you said Friday.
Yes, we'll be sending out a summary for every campus improvement plan and the district improvement plan. We'll send them out electronically. If you would like a hard copy, just let Ms. Logue know and we will get those ready for you. But by this Friday, we will have them.
Item 12D, consider approval of F&G local update. That's an update that came from Mr. Cruz.
Regarding
FNG local, Mr. Cruz is advising that we add a section regarding extracurricular activity complaints. Basically, the superintendent would establish an extracurricular activity committee. So any student parent complaints that arise from participating in those activities would go to the committee, and they would go through that process there, and the decision of the extracurricular activity committee based on the concern or complaint would be the final decision-making entity.
Okay. Item 12E, discussion / possible action to waive the president's report to the board members' continuing education hours as allowed by the Texas Commissioner of Education.
my understanding from Georgianne was that they said that because of the pandemic and there wasn't the ability to attend all these conferences, that they were going to waive this. And so that's why it's being presented to the board. We have to officially waive the report, but it is allowed.
And my understanding is for this term, I believe, only.
Right. Right. Starting next year, we have to go back to earning our credits.
Correct. Item 12F, consider approval of contract with Tracy A. Benson Consulting in the amount of $52,500 for an equity audit in San Marcos CISD, Consolidated Independent School District. Item 12G, consider approval of City of San Marcos detention / water quality easement at San Marcos High School.
That's just one of the last things we have to do to close this project. There's a detention pond that was built with it, and we have to give the city the ability to maintenance that area. It's just standard procedure.
And since we do have some long reports, Mr. Superintendent, we would request that any information you can give us ahead of time to look at, that helps. It's kind of hard when you hand a lengthy report out in writing right at the dais. Anything you can send ahead over the weekend, we appreciate that.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes.
I had, this isn't an action item, but I have a request for information. If we can have an updated report, probably, reflecting information up through the end of next week about the number of students and staff who've contracted the COVID illness, and a comprehensive report on that. And also, I know that we're starting the second 9-week period, and students were given another opt-in period. So I'd like to get another report on how many what students have opted for, and then what the in-person classroom sizes look like, please.
And Mr. Cardona, I appreciate that report you sent out on the failure rate for the UIL. I think it's good to see the difference between the students on learning at home and those learning in person. But eventually, and I know I brought this up to you, eventually I'd like to see how the high school is doing in terms of credits. So between November and December, we won't get another grading period until what, December? Since we just finished our first grading period.
Well, we won't issue credits until late January, early February, because our semester goes longer. Is that so? I don't know that.
I'm just curious how those learning at home are doing, and I guess I'm more concerned about the seniors, like have been in the past, because of recovery and all the extra that the high school does, not a lot of extra work to get them caught up. And with this pandemic and some being at home and some being at school, that's kind of, I'm looking forward to that information at the end of the semester.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get you what we have. We always give you what we have, but it's not good. I'm gonna tell you that. I mean, just looking kind of occurred. So one of the things y'all need to understand is we have to hand do all these reports. We're trying to figure out the system, but I think we're working on getting better reports. But yeah, our remote learners are struggling. I mean, failure wise and current, 6 weeks. And so we'll get you the report kind of like it was broken up by the class sizes of who's at home. Remember where I sent that spreadsheet? So we're trying to get the administrators to fill that out for like a failure report also, so that they don't have to go recreate anything.
That works.
Ms. Cantu, I have something.
Was that Ms.
Can you hear me? Yes. In regards to our continuing ed hours, I do have continuing ed hours I would like for them to be reported, because the school district had to pay a pretty penny for the registration for me to be part of the delegate assembly and the convention. So if you don't mind, I would just like to have that done. So I can get the, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, but it's kind of scrambled, and so I just want to say, if you will turn that in, I can say all of us are exempt from that, but you did earn some at the expense of the district, and I'd be happy to report those if you would like.
That's exactly how I'd like you to word it, because I felt real bad that that we had to pay the registration fee just to be a part of it. I thought it should be free, and that was just my opinion. But and now they're saying we don't have to report. I understand that, but I would like mine to be reported just because we made an expense. Okay, that's it. That's it for me.
President
Okay.
Cantu.
Else?
President Cantu, I have something.
Go ahead, Mr. Blunt. I didn't know you had joined us. I'm glad you joined us.
I was here like at 01 or something. I just didn't make a big deal out of it.
Okay, thank you. Good.
So I'm concerned about Superintendent Cardona timing with regard to testing. We're going to get an informational report. I heard you say regarding a potential partnership or working through TEA, but we're not going to actually approve anything or approve any funds at this meeting, which would mean we're not going to do that until December. And, at least individually, I was hopeful that we would be testing, by at the very latest as the kids come back from Thanksgiving. And so is there a way we can expedite that process so that we might actually consider at least a preliminary approval that would give you the discretion you need to move forward in regard to testing at this meeting?
Are you asking?
No, yeah. I don't know that Doug's on the call. I can't see him. We were looking at other options. We were reaching out to Curative. We do the testing with, and I can't think of the name, the athletes that we do. I don't know what Dr. Rees, you were on that call. I don't know what the turnaround time is for the testing through the state. I know they spoke about, so they would take, we'll use a high school, for example, they would give us X number of tests, like 400 tests to do with both students and staff. And so I know there was about 20 attachments because there's parent consent forms and everything that has to be planned out. But I'm not aware of, he didn't mention this morning in cabinet when they would send us the tests, like when they would start. We have to opt in. I don't think we need, I think we can opt in administratively to do that. But there is going to be a lag time. We had reached out to Curative, but I'm not aware that we heard back about potentially speeding up until TEA's testing kicked in.
And they were still finalizing, and Commissioner Morath stated that more information would be coming out this coming Thursday as well.
So just so that everybody knows, so Mr. McLaughlin, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McLaughlin had asked how to support potentially doing testing much sooner. I think we all have a fear that sometimes kids may be sent to school with symptoms, and now that, you know, we've got the flu, we've got all these other things. And so I think we were trying to figure out how potentially to look at testing sooner through other organizations, Curative being one of them. They're the blue van that's down at Lucio Park, I think, right now. And we were supposed to reach out, but Dr. Barton, I don't know if you had heard back when we talked about this last week.
No, sir, we haven't heard back from them. When we discussed this plan earlier, the major obstacle was it wasn't money and it wasn't a position. It was having people opt into testing. And so that kind of had us at a stalemate, because we could use the same framework we do with athletics for all schools, whoever's willing, and just rotate that across campuses. We've talked about that. We've talked about bringing that company Curative onto our property and allowing them to serve families. But actually the quickest response test is the one that TEA is sending out now. And that's not exactly in the timeline that we're hoping for, but it is the best program that we think that we're going to have. So there's just a little bit of a disconnect between the vision and the execution right now.
Okay. Well, so I heard amidst that we might not have to give you any authorization for you to move forward. So just individually, if it's not going to make this meeting, you know, something that we vote on, and you discover that you need authorization or a budget amendment, you know, I'd come back on a quick emergency meeting on Zoom or whatever it takes so that we don't hold anything up. You know, I wouldn't want y'all to say, well, we got a board meeting in 2 weeks. We'll wait for that. I mean, 2 weeks is a long time, especially if things accelerate. And, you know, my desire is that kids would continue to get to learn on campus. And I think without a more widespread, more robust testing regime, any sort of acceleration in our local positivity rate would make that might make that impossible.
Anything else?
Ms. Cantu, I think Mr. Arredondo had his hand up. I can see his hand raised.
Yeah, I have something, Clem.
Okay, Mr.
I have two things. So one, I just want to thank staff for compiling the report on the UIL pass failures and ineligibility of students. Obviously, there is something going on between students who are reporting to campus and then those who are working remotely. I don't know if that's a topic of conversation for the academic update this November or a later month, but I'm curious to know, you know, staff's opinion of why there's such a disparity between, you know, pass failures between students who are in person and not. And then secondly, what are we doing for those students, both in person and who are remotely, to make sure that they bring those averages up? The second thing, similarly with what Mr. McLaughlin has said, I'm curious about what other services the ISD can provide, not only staff, but families as we go into flu season, you know, flu shots, things like that, as a large employer and as, you know, a governmental entity that sees a large segment of our community. I hope that we can have a conversation about that, maybe not in November, but in December. And if it's too late to make that request, maybe for next year, planning purposes, providing, flu shots to the community at elementary, middle school, high school campuses, so on and so forth. So that's all I got today. Thank y'all.
Andrew, do you want to talk about we are giving our kids the flu shots? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can speak to the student part, and then Dr. Bias can speak to the employee part. But we teamed up with E3 Alliance to provide free flu shots for any student in the district that allowed us to provide a flu shot. So that took place last week, and I can get an estimated amount of participation by campus.
Yeah, for sure, Andrew. Thanks so much for that. I think that is obviously something that I think should be pushed out to the community to let them know as we go into flu season that the ISD is doing these things. So thanks for that.
No problem.
And on the staff end, we provided at different campuses, not just flu vaccinations, but different types of vaccinations. And we normally do it at several campuses and then CVS, and it's all free for our employees.
With the children,
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Bias.
Andrew, with the children, did we have to get permission from parents for those shots?
Yeah, so we sent out multiple messages with the consent form that they had to sign and return back to the campus nurse. And then we're also trying to work partnership with Premier ER. So there's certain, not vaccinations, but certain, Dr. Ruiz-Mos, help me out.
Services.
Immunizations. We still have some students that are now at the end of their immunization cycle. And so we're working with Premier ER to come onto campus or have like a mobile van that will provide those immunizations for our students.
Yeah, and then as far as positive COVID cases, Ms. Halsey, so we do have that on our dashboard. So currently we have a total of 7, or from the beginning of the year, we had 7 positive cases for staff and 16 positive cases for students. And that's as of yesterday. So 23 total for the district.
So are those staff on 14-day leave or something? As we said, they were going to have to go on leave. Were these staff that we've had to have substitutes for?
Positive, well, different staff members. So it depends on what their job title is. And yes, we're following the system with doctor's notes and quarantining and evidence of testing. Yes.
That's good. I'm so happy that we're addressing the flu, because with the oncoming flu, regular flu mixed in with the pandemic, I mean, it can cause a lot of absences. So I'm real glad that we're heading this off with a very positive way.
That's one of the things we hope to accomplish, that I think will address what Mr. McLaughlin was saying, that if we get these tests from TEA, now we have the nurses have the ability, if a kid gets sent to the office and says they have a headache or allergies, we can now do, hopefully soon we'll be able to do the test to at least rule out potential COVID, because right now we have to send them somewhere, and these are less invasive. They are nasal swab, but they're not to the brain swab.
And we don't need parent permission to test them, right?
We will. Oh yeah, we will. That's one of the things with the MOUs, and we're not going to be able to, I don't think any district can force them right now to test, but if they choose not to, then they have to stay at home for 14 days and do remote learning. We can do that.
President Cantu, I have one more follow-up before.
Go ahead, Mr. McLaughlin.
I don't know if we're at the end or not, but just in case. On following up on the UIL report, Mr. Arredondo's question and concerns, it looked like particularly in 9th grade, on football, and I couldn't tell on some of the other sports how many of those were freshmen, but individually having now had 2 kids through the system, that year is brutal. And I'm worried if we have a large number of ninth graders remote, not only how they're going to do in passing their classes, but what they're going to do. Many of them take up to 3 EOCs that year. Do we have, Superintendent Cardona, do you have any plan for that? Or are we encouraging ninth graders to return to campus maybe more expeditiously than other grades? Or what can we do rather than just, watch the train wreck?
May I answer, Mr. Cardona? So what we've been doing, and we're spending a large majority of today as well, but reaching out to ninth grade students, but all students as well that are not passing their classes and are remote. TEA says that we can encourage them to come back, but we can't mandate it. But we're asking them to consider coming back, also setting up intervention time. So if the student needs to remain remote, we can have an intervention time to where we can bring the student back on campus for certain days to work with them and give them that one-on-one. If the parent still does not feel their child can return to campus, then being purposeful and setting up intervention with a teacher in that content area specifically for that student. We've also pushed out tutor.com, which offers 24-hour access with a tutor that is knowledgeable in that subject area. It's provided in English and Spanish, but students can receive up to 30 minutes, 45 minutes worth of support as well in all of the content areas.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth Mills. As a brief follow-up, do you, I know the district had, and many kids came back on campus to take MAP screeners a couple weeks ago. And we have, I know the campuses and the teachers have those data and are going over them in parent-teacher conferences today. Do we have that aggregated data for all our kids that we could see how they're doing as compared to last year and what gaps might have resulted from the spring remote?
Yes, so we're actually concluding the MAP screener testing this week. We have some students who are doing it today and will continue finishing it this week. We should be able to have all of that screener data available by the December board meeting, and we'll be able to pull that for you. And once we receive it, I can share it with the school board.
Thanks.
Ms. Halsey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I know that, for instance, at Miller, the coaches have really been working hard with the teams there to get them in after school and devoting some practice times to tutoring sessions and having teachers stay after late to help the kids. And I think that kind of intensive stuff is great. But I would also encourage you to think about doing online only classes for students who are remote, because frankly, what I've seen with my own students is that once kids came back, and there was this sort of hybrid online in-person thing, it was very difficult for the remote learners to stay engaged. And I think a lot of that had to do with, teachers managing their own classroom. And I think there's so many things going on that I think that that's part of what's happening. And I think if we can do any sort of remote only sections, it'll be beneficial, so.
Anything else? Anyone else? So I'll entertain for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Ms. Hanson, move. Do I hear a second? Ms. Halsey seconds. All in favor, show of hands. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. I think that would have been 6 hands, right?
Correct.
Have a great day.
Y'all too.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.